Good morning and welcome back to Sage and Stone Homestead. My name is Heather, and if you've been here for a little while, you can probably recognize that my voice sounds a lot different. I was a little bit sick this past week and my voice is still recovering, but I thank you for bearing with me for this garden tour because it's an important one. We are getting an actual freeze tonight. Now, most of the stuff that I have planted, especially out here in the raised bed garden, will be able to handle the freeze just fine. Our Brussels sprouts that we planted last week have settled in nicely. There's not a lot of upward growth, but they're working on their roots right now. We amended with some clay, actually from our pond, and then some manure from our barn. And they were just kissed with a little bit of rain last night, which we desperately needed. When I've grown Brussels sprouts here in the past, it's been a real benefit to have grown them alongside this trellis. The Brussels sprout, I guess they're canes, I don't know, the stalks get really tall and we have a lot of wind pressure here, and I'm able to secure them to the trellis and they do really well this way. Our cucamelons, last time we got a light frost, did get a tiny bit affected. They're definitely going to be completely gone by tomorrow morning, but that's okay. It was a great summer. The kale and the lettuce beds are looking lovely. I'm growing these for head lettuce, so I'm not really going to pick much today, but I do want to give it a taste since we did get a little bit of a frost the other day. These should taste much more sweet. Much better. The frost-tolerant plants have a mechanism inside of them that creates more sugars in order to protect the cell walls of the plant. And when it experiences cooler temperatures, more of those sugars are produced, and that translates to a sweeter leaf. This here is butter crunch lettuce, and down here, this is a romaine type called Paris Island Cause. I am also still finding some volunteer potatoes coming up. There's the potato here. And this is really the only spinach that I planted that is doing well. A lot of them look like they've been ravaged by some kind of bug. I haven't had great luck with spinach, but I do have one plant. I don't really know what it is with me and spinach, but I will figure it out. Let's give this kale a taste, shall we? As far as the kale goes, I am going to be doing the cut and come again method with harvesting. So I'm going to be harvesting the outer bottom leaves and allowing the plant to grow more leaves from the middle. Definitely one of my favorite greens. Kale happens to be one of my kids' favorite vegetables as well. The asparagus fronds are still living despite the frost that we had the other day, but tonight these will be impacted. Our low is supposed to be around 30, which is definitely below freezing. It's kind of funny, it looks like these asparagus fronds actually got a second wind in the last couple of weeks. More asparagus stalks did come up and frond and fan out, which is actually pretty encouraging. It means that the crowns underneath the ground are good and healthy, and there's more fronds available to collect more sun and impart it down into the root structure, which they've been doing it slowly but surely throughout the fall, but these are going to be of no use to the plant coming up here soon. Our zinnia did not live past that last frost. Well, at least it didn't live well through it. The seeds in the zinnia flower are actually in this cone here that comes up in the center of the plant. So if you peel back the cone and pinch off, all of these little things are seeds. A lot of times birds come through and really ravage these things, but it looks like that most of these actually have quite a few seeds in them. These seeds might not be the most mature. Let me see if I can find some mature seeds to show you. These are just a little bit white, and I don't know that the seed inside has really had time to mature before it died in the frost. Here we go, I got a couple more. These are a little bit more brown on the inside instead of white. Zinnia seeds are pretty thin and papery, and it can be really hard to find good seed inside, but this looks like one. I'm gonna put it in the garden bed. Why not? We're getting all kinds of treats in the garden this morning. Wow. Oh, look what we have. This is actually volunteer calendula flower. Look at all of them. That's cool. So calendula is actually a frost-tolerant flower, and the flower is really great medicinally. It's great for wounds, and I've actually made a healing salve with calendula before, and we love it. It's really great as like a lip balm or for scrapes and bumps and bruises and all that. And I had a lot of calendula over here, and it looks like a lot of it went to seed, and it should survive the frost that we have. Now, it might not necessarily flower, but if I can get it to survive the winter, it could easily flower pretty early in the spring next year. I had intentionally planted some calendula as well, and I do have some in the greenhouse, and in there it could flower. This here is my tromboncino squash that I have outside. It's not doing amazingly. There's a couple little blossoms and fruits hanging on, but this is absolutely gonna die by tonight. So a couple of these little fruits that are living, I'll pick these off and we can saute them with dinner. But this is the last we'll be seeing of this plant out here in the raised bed garden. The greenhouse though, the greenhouse has some hope. We're actually getting some foggy glasses and lenses upon walking in here. So last night I actually shut the greenhouse up knowing that it was going to be a good sunny day today. I really want the greenhouse to be able to collect as much heat as possible because this is not a heated greenhouse, and in general non-heated greenhouses in ideal conditions can stay 8 degrees above the outside temperature. Hey guys, Heather here again, and I just wanted to interject on myself a little bit here because I wasn't super clear in what I was trying to describe. So an unheated greenhouse will stay 8 degrees above the outside temperature at night in ideal conditions. During the day, a closed up greenhouse with the sun on it can be 30 degrees or more warmer than the outside air, and we're experiencing that right now. So it's high noon on the day in question, and it's 85 degrees in the greenhouse, which does not bother me at all. Outside, it's 51 degrees and the wind is blowing. So as long as it doesn't get 90 degrees or above in here, my brassicas are gonna be just fine. Even then, a couple hours of 90 isn't gonna hurt them, and it's gonna benefit the tromboncino overnight. So with the sides closed, we should be able to retain enough heat in here that was collected throughout the day to get that tromboncino through the coldest parts of the morning. So back to your regularly scheduled programming. And that's a really good thing because I really want to get some of this tromboncino squash to be at a stage where I can keep them as winter squash. And a couple of them are actually really, really close. Can you guys hear that annoying honking noise? So thankfully I can shut those off. I actually had a company send me a couple of solar powered rodent repellers for my garden and for my greenhouse, and they are very well needed. So I hope they work, but I don't know yet, so I don't have a verdict. So I'm not going to be talking about them too much, but I do know that the sound is very annoying. So if I was a mouse, I'd want to get out of here. I actually spent the afternoon coming in here and clearing out the east side of the greenhouse. It's the last side that really needed my attention. And when I was clearing out the marigolds, I noticed that there were some pretty decently large rodent holes tunneling underneath the fabric here. And that's really, really disheartening because rodents, when they tunnel through your garden beds, they can really cause a lot of destruction, and that's really going to impact the plants. The tunnels that they make create way too large of an air pocket for the plants, and they won't put roots down in those spots. So it really limits your plants and can seriously stunt them if the rodents don't just eat them. So I really, really, really hope that those little noisy rodent repellers do genuinely work. And I think we're going to be able to tell because I know that there have been some really big rodents in here. Anyway, back to our tromboncino squash. So quite a few of them are getting this nice creamy yellow color. When they are fully ripe, they should be generally the color of a butternut squash, and I should be seeing the stems that attach to the vine start to turn brown. I can tell that they're barely starting that transition, and I really don't want these plants to freeze. Now, I can harvest the tromboncino that have started to turn, and I can cure them indoors. It's just not going to be as ideal. Technically, the ideal way to cure a squash off of the vine is in temperatures of 80 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit with the same degree of humidity. So you want high humidity and high heat. But if you're starting to experience frosts, that can be really hard to come by because I don't keep my house at that humidity for sure, and definitely not at that temperature. And so I'm at a loss of where I would actually find those ideal conditions. So for me, it would be really awesome if the frost just stayed out of the greenhouse just for that much longer, because these guys, they're looking good. And I know that when they do mature on the vine, they are going to last about 6 months in dry storage inside the house. If I cured them at this stage, they wouldn't last as long, but I would really love for them to last as long as possible. Like I mentioned before, I did spend quite a long time yesterday clearing out the east side of the greenhouse. And while I was doing so, I found quite a few green tomatoes, which is a really great end of season treat. With our green tomatoes in the past, we have made pickled green tomatoes. We have done a green tomato relish, which I highly recommend. It is super, super delicious. If I can find the recipe, I'll stick it in the description box below. We've made salsa verde. I have made green tomato ketchup. Really, the possibilities are nearly endless. So if you've got a bunch of green tomatoes at the end of the season like I do some research, because there's a whole lot that you can do with those. I did find a few tomato hornworms that were lingering in here, and yesterday I did find some white cabbage moth butterflies in the greenhouse on my broccoli, and that's not a good thing. So the broccoli really is looking huge and amazing. I'm so happy with the growth of it. There really just has been minimal bug damage, but I may need to come through here pretty soon with some BT. We had tomato hornworms here in the greenhouse pretty bad during the summer, and I did dust those tomato plants with BT, and that worked extremely well. This time I bought a liquid BT that I can spray on these plants, and I'm going to do that at some point this week. In general, when it gets real cold, you don't have to worry too much about moths and butterflies and things. Just because we're freezing tonight doesn't mean we won't be 75 next week, because that is the forecast. So we haven't seen the end of moths and butterflies and things, and we're not seeing the end of their destruction either. I have noticed that the tromboncino are starting to get some signs of powdery mildew. I may or may not treat this, because I know that as soon as I can get some of these larger squash to maturity, that these are just going to be pulled out. In the meantime, though, I have trimmed off some of the worst leaves because, I mean, they're not contributing anything to the plant after a certain point. So removing them just helps increase the airflow and take some of the worst parts of the disease away from the plant, and hopefully can extend the life and the health of the plant as long as we need for those squash to mature. Basil starting to come back. This is something that would die in a frost as well. There's cauliflower along this wall here. Here's one of those intentional calendula plants. I hope that because it's in the greenhouse that it will flower. We'll see. And yesterday, after I got this cleaned out, I did put in the rest of our fall and winter starts. A lot of these are cabbage, cauliflower, purple sprouting broccoli. I'm really excited for all of it. So even though the starts that I have in the greenhouse are frost tolerant, I wanted to make sure that I got the starts in the ground to help protect their roots. So inside these pots, these plants have been in here for far too long. We're at over 2 months at this point. And so the roots are getting really congested in the pot. And the only thing between those roots and the outside air is this thin pot, and that's not ideal. So being able to get the starts out of those little cell trays and into the ground is going to help protect the roots from the cold. So tomorrow morning, that's when this video posts. That is when we are experiencing our hardest freeze of this season so far. Hang out with me down in the comments below. We can chat about exactly how the greenhouse fared. And if you haven't seen our playlist yet for our spring and summer garden and how amazing this greenhouse did and all of the food that it produced, I'm gonna place that playlist up here.